Hello, 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 MCR family. A little reaction post-fight show for you guys, breaking down UFC 247, Jon Jones versus Dominic Reyes, plus on Showtime, Gary Russell Jr. versus King Tug, and also on Matchroom/DAZN, Kell Brook versus Mark DeLuca. I'm going to break it down all right now on this reaction post-fight show on Mixed Combat Radio. Hit the like button, share the show, all that fun stuff, and I'm Matt, the Hipster Hunter. Let's get into it. First off, a little housekeeping. Because of our internet issues today, if you don't know what it is, check our community tab. This show is obviously not live. It's pre-recorded and it's posted out to you guys. I apologize sincerely for that. But without further ado, let's get to the news of the night, the news of the day and the weekend, obviously. That is UFC 247, Jon Jones narrowly getting past Dominic Reyes, and probably a controversial decision because on my scorecards, from a lot of people else in the media, it seemed like Dominic Reyes was the majority pick in terms of who people thought won the fight. Yes, there were people that I absolutely find respectable and credible in terms of media and just sort of pundits in this industry that did score it for Jon Jones, so it's not out of the question. I'm not going to sit here and say that's a robbery, so to speak, but this is definitely a controversial decision since it seemed like a lot of people scored the first 3 rounds for Dominic Reyes since he landed the bigger, more effective, more damaging blows in those first 3 rounds. And honestly, had Jon Jones, maybe you can argue, we haven't seen Jon Jones hurt like that since the first Alexander Gustafsson fight, to be quite honest. Maybe you can put in like the Thiago Santos fight, but that's more of the fight was close because nothing really happened. It was predominantly a boring fight. While this one was, no, Jon Jones was getting beat up. He was getting touched up. He was getting arguably dropped in the first round. So this fight is much more in line with the first Alexander Gustafsson fight for Jon Jones, where he was tested and he had to sort of come on in the championship rounds. You can obviously argue that he won the 3rd round as well, give him the 48-47 scorecard, though that 49-46 scorecard just makes no sense at all. But digressing, shout out to the Texas Commission. Jon Jones, you can argue, won the fight in the later half due to Dominic Reyes slowing down. His boxing, I think, taking over in the second half, landing the better blows, slipping shots better. And obviously that takedown was in the 3rd or 4th round. Definitely helped sort of change the momentum of the fight. It pushed Dominic Reyes past that cardio point, especially so. And Dominic Reyes never really got that second wind in here. Definitely curious with only 12 fights now, 13 fights, 12-1, how Dominic Reyes looks long term in the next, let's say, 3 to 5 years. He's definitely one of those guys. Athletically speaking, he's truly gifted. From a technical perspective, he is making the leaps and bounds in fights that we hope to see from prospects/contenders that are young, that only have a very limited amount of fights. And it's not out of the question that these guys rematch down the line, let's say 18 months from now, 12 months from now, and Reyes wins the fight. He arguably won it here. His boxing in the first half of the fight, where his cardio wasn't suspect anymore, wasn't a liability for him, was this clearly the ace in his deck, so to speak. It was the ace in his hand, and Jon Jones didn't really have an answer for it. His wrestling wasn't working. The leg kicks were quite effective because, I mean, they always are, but in terms of boxing, in terms of defending the boxing and the strikes from Dominic Reyes, he was having a very difficult time with that. It was either he was all the way out landing kicks, but the second he was within boxing range, he wanted to get out. He was desperate to get out. And I would argue that while he was successful at times getting out of range, getting out of danger, a lot of other times Dominic Reyes had success, was landing shots on the exit of Jon Jones. I thought this was a really back and forth fight. And again, one of those fights where I wasn't a big believer of Dominic Reyes heading into it. I'm now a big believer of him as a top 5 light heavyweight moving forward. And also, the narrative of, is Jon Jones finally slowing down? And yes, he's only 31, 32 years old, but he's also a guy that peaked probably far earlier than other fighters, has had a lot of trouble outside the cage that may have accelerated his decline, so to speak, athletically speaking, and just something to look at. Because I don't know if the narrative should be John Jones was the next generation of fighters feasting on a past generation of fighters. And that's not a knock on him. That's just how it works. And now he's facing the next generation of fighters, and he's having a level of difficulty with that. With, maybe Anthony Smith, with the Dominic Reyes, even like Alexander Gustafsson, you can argue is maybe his contemporary, so to speak, but also not someone that was of that past generation that John Jones made his legacy on. The Rampages, the Machitas, the Rashad Evans, the Shoguns, etc. I think there's a clear generational difference now in the light heavyweight division with guys like Reyes, and I'm curious to see how long can John Jones stay on the top, because this is combat sports, and reigns of the likes of John Jones are not common in any combat sport. Boxing, MMA, BJJ, kickboxing, his reign is a rarity. I think we really are like it maybe coming to an end is not necessarily a bad thing. It's just how the sport works, how sports work, and just something to look at going forward. Quickly, I'm going to just run down the undercard because I'll be honest, like I said, having a lot of technical issues tonight. Didn't see some of it, and plus the stuff that I could see, I was also watching boxing cards like on the Showtime Gary Russell cards, so didn't really get to see as much as I wanted to and give it a in-depth breakdown. I was hoping that Anthony Walker was going to be here in studio, but we had to cancel the show, so he's not in studio with me, and he would have been here to really give his expert take on all these MMA fights. I will definitely have him back ASAP for a show because A, missed the guy, and B, definitely want his insight on this card and just the MMA world in general. Valentina Shevchenko defeating Caitlin Shkogan via, third round TKO in the first minute? Yes, first minute. Got that mounted crucifix and just beat her up. Got the TKO finish. And honestly, she outclassed Caitlin Shkogan. Like, there was no point in this fight where it was competitive from what I saw. Shevchenko was athletically light years ahead of her. From a technical perspective, light years ahead of her. And Shevchenko is just light years ahead of everyone at 125. I don't see anyone beating her at this weight except for maybe really talented strawweights moving up. Maybe like a Rose Namajunas, maybe a Willie Zhang. Maybe somebody of that nature can move up and have success. Maybe Jessica Andrade. Like, that'd be interesting to see at 125. But other than that, it's really just Amanda Nunes that's really her foil, and that's at 135. And even though the first two fights were largely not the best, I think that's still probably the best fight you can make in women's MMA right now. It just is. It has the most meaning to it. And plus, you can make a legitimate argument that Shevchenko won those first two fights. So, yes, on paper, Nunes is 2-0, so making a trilogy doesn't make as much sense on paper. But if you know MMA, you can sell a trilogy fight with these two. And the UFC should be able to do that. If they can't, and we then start talking about the UFC having promotional issues in terms of how effective they are as a promotional company in the new Endeavor age. Moving on, Juan Adams losing to Justin Tafa via the first round KO. Juan Adams definitely not panning out as I think some people expected. Dan Ige defeating Masad Becik via split decision. Derek Lewis defeating Ilir Latifi via unanimous decision. Just brutalized him with anytime they were standing up, he was brutalizing him. Latifi had some success grappling, but Derek Lewis just, largely speaking, had a lot of success on the feet. Trevin Giles defeating James Krause. Lauren Murphy defeating Andrea Lee. That was a really good back and forth fight. Both women just stood in the center in the phone booth and just exchange combinations. Really fun fight there. And a split decision. So I want to go back and score. It was one of those fights I was kind of watching and not really scoring and paying attention to as much as I should probably. Also, Chaos Williams defeating Alex Morano in the first round. Great KO win in that fight as well. And the rest of the fights, I just be honest, I just did not see. I just didn't have time to see as I was transitioning from the Brook card to the UFC card. Just missed some of their first fights. Let's get to the Gary Russell card on Showtime. Gary Russell defeating King Tug Tugasat Nyambayar in the main event on Showtime, and really just showed his class, his levels, both from a technical perspective, from an athletic perspective, from an experience perspective, above King Tug. King Tug is a fantastic amateur fighter, silver medalist in the Olympics, 11-0, great prospect, good knockout ratio, big guy in the division too, long, tall and long for the division, and had a lot of success in the second half of the fight. But Gary Russell Jr.'s defensive movement, both laterally speaking from a footwork perspective and from his ability to slip and roll under shots. Like anytime, because Gary Russell was the southpaw facing the orthodox, anytime King Tug threw that straight right, which is his bread and butter shot, is that straight right down the pipe, Gary Russell just slipped to the side and then rolled under it, and boom, he was back in position. Or he could throw the right hand, boom, circle out. Like Gary Russell just was circling and dancing around King Tug for large aspects of this fight and outboxing and making him miss time and time again, deflecting shots, countering, landing combinations. And King Tug really had to sort of bite down the mouthpiece as the fight wore on and just get through those counters and work through it and land his own shots. And while even like in the 11th and 12th round, those were really back and forth rounds where King Tug was having a lot of success, even then, Gary Russell was landing great counters against King Tug. It was just the volume of King Tug and the relentlessness and his understanding that I have to walk through these shots and to get a knockout if I'm going to win a fight. I've lost too many rounds to win a decision. I have to make something happen. I'm going to will it to happen. And he kind of did that. Technique be damned. I'm going to walk through Gary Russell's shots and land my own. And I'm going to focus on the body to slow him down. And that had a lot of success. And that's not something we should be surprised by because Joseph Diaz had a lot of success doing that. Even Lomachenko had success going to the body and pressuring Gary Russell Jr. in their fight. That's definitely a path to beating Gary Russell Jr. That's why Russell and Warrington fight is such a mouth-watering matchup because that is a perfect style matchup disparity where Gary Russell could just outbox if he wants to get on his bike, if he wants to make it, air quotes, boring, he could win a decision in your mind rather easily against Josh Warrington. And also, likewise, vice versa, Josh Warrington, likewise easily in your mind, could out-pressure, out-volume, and bully Gary Russell and win a decision as well. That fight is perfect. And this fight with King Tug, I think, especially in the second half of the fight, showed that pressure fighters are always going to be a problem for Gary Russell to some degree. But his speed, his boxing IQ, his ring generalship, everything is so high level. He's the best pure boxer in the division. You have to be technically efficient enough to where that disparity, that rift between the levels of you and Gary Russell isn't as much. But also you have to be like King Tug. You have to be tall. You have to have power. You have to have that size advantage. But you have to be willing to walk through it. You have to have the chin and the durability to walk through it. And I don't think King Tug had faith in his chin to walk through it due to his 2 knockdowns with Oscar Escudon. I think he was a little bit wary of Gary Russell's power. And plus, Gary Russell was landing some really sharp counters on him. And I thought having a lot of success. And there's even a part of me that thought if Gary Russell can keep up the movement and the counters like he did in the first 4 rounds, if by round 8, 9, 10, if this is the same, he might get a late TKO. That didn't happen, but I think that's largely due to King Tug sort of, again, willing and psyching himself out of the fear of the counter, because there was a little bit of that. Whenever, King Tug, to his credit, was walking down Gary Russell, was parrying shots quite well, was slipping shots quite well, but he wouldn't counter. Like when Gary Russell would throw his little jabs out and then throw, let's say, a left hand or a right hook off of the jab, King Tug could actually slip the shot or parry it quite well, and he was in a position to counter. He just didn't pull the trigger. And he did that for large, and long portions of this fight, and I think that cost him. That cost him big in this fight. And hopefully he goes back and looks at the tape and says, if I just threw 20 more punches on average in rounds 1 through 6, this fight would have been 100% different. And that's absolutely true. But then again, that goes back to experience. Gary Russell's 30-1 as a professional. King Tug is 11-0. Like that does matter. It's hard to get past that to some degree, especially when you're fighting a guy that's not just 31, but he's Gary fucking Russell, another Olympian, a guy that has fought and beat really great competition at 126 so far, and his only lone loss is to a future Hall of Famer, Lomachenko. What's next for either guy? Gary Russell Jr., I think obviously next for him, in my opinion, would be what I would want would be Josh Warrington. That's not happening though. Hopefully, just for like his own mental health, so to speak, right? I don't mean that in a disparaging way at all, but like I it's clear that it's a chip on his shoulder that Leo Santa Cruz fight has never happened. And in some ways, that fight needed to happen to determine who was the true king at featherweight. And it never happened. And it was an in-house fight. Upsetting. I hope that fight happens next, especially if Gervonta Davis and his legal issues maybe, push his fight off to the summer to some degree. Make the Leo Gary Russell fight for April, May. That's what I would do. That's a fantastic fight. Put that in Staples Center. Put that in the Forum. I want that fight. But if not that, obviously Josh Warrington, unification. In my opinion, that is the winner of that fight is clearly the number one guy at featherweight too. So I would love that fight. Moving on, Guillermo Rigondeaux defeating Liborio Solis via split decision. I did not see how you guys scorecard for Liborio Solis, but whatever. Beside the point, Guillermo Rigondeaux had a really rough first round. I mean, was hurt, was on his way to almost getting finished. And then he was like, you know what, I'm going to stop fighting like I did in the Ceja fight. I'm going to stop fighting in the phone booth and looking to just eat shots and then trade back a sharp left hand. I'm going to be the Rigo of old. I'm going to make this a boring-ass fight, air quotes. And I'm going to put a defensive clinic on Solis. And he did. And he did with style, too. In that 7th round, you can tell that, especially after the 7th round, even on, Guillermo Rigondeaux was trying to get the finish at times, and Solis was just a very tough competitor, and I think Guillermo Rigondeaux really don't overcommit too much to that finish in case Solis was able to hurt him again, because Solis was able to hurt him. There's a reason I think that Guillermo Rigondeaux kept in the dogfight with Ceja for so long until he got the finish. While in this fight, the second this fight got to a dogfight position in the first round, Rigondeaux was like, nope, I'm out. I want control of this fight again. And no discredit to him. It won the fight, and he was clearly showed that the old Rigo, our concerns about his reflexes, his ability to be the defensive maestro that he was, maybe it's not there anymore. I think it's one of those things where if he doesn't respect your power, we might see a Rigo that is more in your face, that's looking for a knockout, that sacrifices a lot of his defensive work. But if he respects your power to any degree, it's going to be a little bit different. It's going to be to where he's back on his bike and he's back being a defensive Cuban boxer. And no discredit to him. Like I said, I thought he put in a fantastic fight here. I thought the calls of this fight being awful, I get it, but I thought this was a decent fight. Like, it was all right. I thought the first round, the 7th round, even like rounds like 12th and 11th and 10th round, I thought those were really fun rounds as well. I thought those all made up for the Guillermo Rigondeaux defensive rounds. And plus, I'm okay with that, largely speaking. Like, I don't care. I did not see the card opener because I was dealing with some internet issues. The Jaime Aboledo fight against Jason Velez. I did not see that. Heard it was amazing, so I'll go back and watch it. And also, I heard that the undercard was really good. The untelevised portion, I heard that one of the Gary Russell brothers, Gary Antoine Russell, got a first-round KO, now 13-0 with 13 knockouts. Hope we see that guy on TV soon, since he seems to be a good prospect. And again, with the Gary Russell name, He already has cachet with us as boxing fans and consumers. Let's move on to the last card of the night, and then we're going to get out of here on this little post-fight show. Kell Brook defeating Mark DeLuca in the 7th round via KO on the Matchroom DAZN card. And what to say about Kell Brook? I think Kell Brook showed enough athletically that I wasn't as concerned as I was in the Michael Zarafa fight or the Sergey Rabchenko fight. However, he is still like awfully hittable for fighting this level of competition. And seeing or imagining him fighting the Rosarios, the Williams, the Lauras, even like the Trouts of the world, the Castanos, the Teixeiras, I don't see him winning those fights, to be honest. Even like fights with Carlos Adames would be extremely tough. Where I would pick Carlos Adames to beat Kell Brook. I just don't know really what Kell Brook has left in the tank. He's making inferior competition look far too competitive with them at times, in my opinion. I know he knocked down DeLuca twice. I know he largely dominated this fight, but again, he was just getting hit with shots that I was looking at and going, it's not that I think that he just didn't respect DeLuca. I think he tried to, be on his A game, and he was still getting hit with shots. A little bit concerning. Again, he's fighting so infrequent. He is fighting such inferior competition. To imagine him making a massive jump up and fighting top 10 competition at junior middleweight just seems a little bit ignorant of where Kell Brook is at in 2020, because he's not there yet. Let's just be honest here. I understand that the top 10 guys can all lose to each other on any given night, but those top 10 guys could still beat Kell Brook right now, because Kell Brook isn't fighting top 10 opposition. They are. They're fighting really good opposition. And yeah, they might be losing to them, but they're fighting really good opposition time and time again. Kell Brook hasn't, and he's been fighting so infrequently. I just can't buy it. And plus, this isn't his natural weight class. I think that's also clear. That, yes, I think maybe he's a little bit too big for 147, but I think he's obviously a little bit too small for 154 as well. Terry Harper defeating Ava Wallstrom in a really fun back-and-forth fight. Wallstrom down in the 7th round. Really one of those fights where I wish it was 3-minute rounds and 12 rounds for women's fights as well. The whole 20 minutes of women's action compared to 36 minutes of men's action for title fights is just getting a little bit egregious at this point. But Terry Harper, she looked fantastic. She looked on point. I think her shots were crisp, fast, and plus they had pop to them. Terry Harper is not someone that I see as being a power puncher, and she was rocking Ava Wallstrom. She knocked her down, but I thought she was just kind of beating her up in the process too. I was really impressed. I looked at that fight, or I looked at Harper's performance and said, this is what I think people are wishing Michaela Mayer turns out to be, to some degree. That really fundamental technical approach that is slightly basic, but it's so refined that compared to the competition level in women's boxing, they should be able to win a lot of these fights. But Terry Harper, she had some pop. She had some athleticism behind it. She had, again, some speed. The speed of Harper was the most shocking thing in this fight. Wallstrom is an athletic freak, but again, Harper looked extremely fast in this fight, and again, the pop on her shots was notable. Kid Galahad defeating Claudio Moreo, and I thought this was a fun fight. I know a lot of people online hated this. Thought it was a boring fight. Thought Kid Galahad put on another boring fight. I thought he put on a true clinic. I thought he looked fantastic. The way he was bowling Moreo on the inside. When we talk about pure boxers, guys that maybe don't even have a lot of pop like Galahad, they traditionally speaking are guys that want to be on the outside, want that distance from their opponent, so they don't feel rushed, they don't feel pressure, they don't feel any heat from their opponent in terms of combination, aggression, power shots, whatever it may be. Because once you get in that mid-range to the inside, to the phone booth, it's impossible really for most, again, stereotypically speaking, for boxers, pure boxers, they struggle on the inside. They want to be on the outside. Galahad, a guy that I thought kind of struggled with the inside against Josh Warrington, clearly made some improvement in that department. And again, bullied Moreo on the inside. I mean, yeah, he would use some dirty tactics, but I don't care. Like, this is boxing. That was the ref's job to fucking fix that. The ref kind of blew it on this one. In Galahad, I thought he was landing everything. Like, anytime he was moving sideways in and out at the same time, and where Claudio and Morero was moving, didn't matter. He was landing shots. The amount of times that he would be exiting the clinch, he would rough him up with some body shots, rake him with the elbow, and then get disengaged, and then boom, 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 pop him with the 2 shots, and then back out. It was just so sublime. I mean, I was really blown away by Kid Galahad's performance. And, credit to Rob, UK Rob, co-host. He was always a big supporter of Kid Galahad before the Josh Warrington fight, and I wasn't. I was a doubter of his abilities. And the Josh Warrington fight happened, and I thought he won that fight. I thought it was a close fight, arguable. I'm not saying he got robbed or anything like that, but I thought he won the fight. And then my opinions about him, quickly change. And then he, again, comes in against Claudio Morel, who's a tough top 15, top 10 competitor, and blows him out to the point where him and his corner quit the fight. They quit in the 8th round. They no-mossed it to a degree. Because there was nothing they were doing that was successful. Nothing. Galahad put on a virtuoso performance here. And again, if you thought it was boring, I get it. But if you go back and watch it with a super analytical mind, go back and watch it from a pure technical perspective to analyze technique, watch his fight and tell me that if you're training out there, if you want your kids to be boxing, tell me that you would not be showing them Kid Galahad tapes saying, this is how you fight on the inside. When you're fighting a guy that wants to bully you, you rake him with the elbow, you bully him with body shots, okay? Anytime you're moving in and out sideways, you are trying to land counters. You're trying to land on the move. Score shots. Because guess what? When you are in the clinch and you disengage, your opponent's hands are naturally most likely down, and also they are not expecting you to throw shots. They're expecting you to disengage. So as you're retreating, throw that left hook. Throw that lead hook, whatever it is that's in your arsenal that's there in the angles. And Kid Galahad, I think, showed a true masterclass performance here. And sort of connecting a lot of the featherweight discussion here, because, also in the featherweight division, like Gary Russell Jr., I would love to see Gary Russell Jr. versus Josh Warrington. I would love to see King Tug versus Chu Shan. And I would love to see Shakur Stevenson versus Kid Galahad. Give me those fights, please. Also, Martin Joseph Ward put on a good fight as well. David Allen picked up a win. John Doherty picked up a win. And Dante Dixon picked up a win. Those are all the fights that I saw. They all looked pretty good. But, A-sides fighting showcases. So not much to expect in those fights. Well, guys, this is going to be it for the post-fight show. Hit the like button, share the show, subscribe, all that fun stuff. I hope you guys enjoyed this little quick fight show. Again, sorry I could not be live, but I hope you guys appreciate that I got this out to you, because you guys have no idea how difficult it was, even to record this and get it uploaded. It's been a pain in the ass. Again, apologies to all of our hardcore listeners, our longtime supporters, for maybe wanting content tonight ASAP and it not being there. Again, I tried, and it just wasn't working. We're having a technician coming out on Wednesday to fix the internet. But digressing, find me, Matt Hunter, MCR, on all social media platforms. Hit the like button, share the show, subscribe, patreon.com/Mixed Combat Radio. Peace.